The Chrononet complex stood as a gleaming monument to human achievement at the edge of Saigon's business district. Its smooth glass facade reflected the sunset in hues of amber and crimson, creating an almost ethereal glow that distinguished it from the surrounding skyscrapers. Inside Laboratory 6, Dr. Lemin hunched over a microscope, his tired eyes fixed on the extraordinary cells beneath the lens. "Temporal modulation at 60%, he murmured, making a note on his tablet. "Biological rhythm stable." The year was 2062, and humanity had achieved what once seemed impossible: the ability to control biological time. Chrononet, initially developed as a medical intervention for terminal patients, had evolved into something far greater: a comprehensive system that could regulate the human body's temporal experience. Aging could be slowed, metabolism adjusted, and the biological clock fine-tuned to optimize human performance. Min had been with the project since its conception 15 years ago. His research on quantum biology had laid the theoretical foundation for Chrononet, earning him international acclaim and the leadership of the Time Research Center. Yet tonight, as he observed the cellular response to his experimental vaccine, his thoughts were elsewhere, on his wife Lynn, who had volunteered for the first human trials 5 years ago and never woke up. "Dr. Min," called a gentle voice from the doorway. "It's past midnight. You should rest." Nurse Trang stood with her arms crossed, her face a portrait of concern. In the years since Lin's death, Trang had become Min's closest confidant, the only one who understood his obsession with perfecting Chrononet. "Just one more test," Min replied, not looking up from his work. "The cellular response is promising. If the vaccine works, we could prevent temporal desynchronization entirely." Trang approached, peering over his shoulder at the swirling patterns of light that represented time-altered cells. "Your daughter called again," she said softly. "Mai is worried about you." Min's hands stilled momentarily. Mai, his 16-year-old daughter, had grown up in the shadow of his work, losing both her mother to Chrononet and, in many ways, her father to his relentless pursuit of redemption through science. "I'll call her in the morning," he promised, knowing it wasn't enough. This vaccine could change everything. Trang, no more temporal side effects, no more risks. Chrononet could fulfill its promise without claiming more lives. Trang placed a hand on his shoulder. "The world can wait until tomorrow. Min, go home." Before he could respond, his tablet chimed with an urgent alert. Both froze as they read the message. "Emergency. Patient admitted to International Hospital with unknown temporal anomaly. Chrononet connection. Suspected. Presence requested immediately." Min's fatigue vanished as adrenaline surged through his system. "Call Engineer Huang," he instructed Trong as he gathered his equipment. "Tell him to meet us at the hospital. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. Or our worst nightmare." The International Hospital occupied the eastern wing of the Chrononet complex, specially designed to treat patients with temporal disorders. As Min rushed through the sterile white corridors, he could feel the tension in the air. Medical staff moved with unusual urgency, and security personnel had been stationed at key junctions. Dr. Wei, the head of emergency medicine, met him at the quarantine section, her face grave behind her protective mask. "We've never seen anything like this," she said, leading him toward an isolation room. The patient was using standard Chrononet protocols to regulate his sleep cycle when he began experiencing rapid temporal fluctuations. Through the observation window, Min saw a man strapped to a bed, convulsing violently. But what made his blood run cold was the impossible sight before him. The patient's face and body were aging and rejuvenating in rapid cycles, shifting from youth to old age and back within seconds. "Patient 0, Min whispered, the implications dawning on him with terrifying clarity. "Time has become contagious." Engineer Huang arrived minutes later, his usually calm demeanor shaken by the sight of the patient. In his early 40s, Huang had been the programming genius behind ChronoNet's interface, developing the algorithms that translated Min's theories into practical applications. "How is this possible?" Huang asked, his voice barely audible. "The safeguards should prevent any temporal feedback loop." Min was already analyzing the patient's ChronoNet implant data on a secure terminal. "It's not a malfunction," he said after a moment, his face pale. "It's a virus, a biological agent that's hijacked the ChronoNet protocols. Look at this viral signature." On the screen, a complex pattern of molecular structures revealed themselves. Unlike anything in medical records, the virus had somehow merged with ChronoNet's quantum particles, creating a hybrid pathogen that could manipulate temporal biology. "We need to isolate everyone who's been in contact with him," Min ordered, "and shut down ChronoNet servers in this sector immediately." "That's not possible," came a deep voice from behind them. Over 30% of the city's population relies on ChronoNet for medical stability. Brigadier General Vu Khan stood in the doorway, his military uniform immaculate even at this late hour. As head of national security for advanced technologies, Khan had always taken a special interest in ChronoNet's development, particularly its potential military applications. "General Khan," Min acknowledged with thinly veiled distaste, "this is a medical emergency, not a military one." Khan's expression remained impassive. "When a technology that controls human time becomes compromised, Dr. Min, it becomes a matter of national security. My team will take over containment procedures." "Your team doesn't understand the science," Min protested. "We need to—" His words were cut short by an alarm from the patient's room. On the monitors, vital signs spiked chaotically, and through the window, they watched in horror as the man's temporal shifts accelerated. His body seemed to blur, aging decades in moments, then rewinding to youth, faster and faster until the patient vanished, leaving behind only an empty bed and restraints. "What just happened?" Khan demanded, his composure finally cracking. Min stared at the empty space where a human being had existed moments before. "His personal timeline collapsed," he said quietly. "He's gone, erased from our temporal continuum." "Or displaced," Huang suggested, frantically checking readings from the room's sensors. "The energy signature didn't dissipate, it relocated." Before anyone could respond, Min's tablet chimed with multiple alerts from across the city. Reports were flooding in of temporal anomalies, people aging rapidly in public spaces, others claiming to see versions of themselves from different times, and most alarmingly, time fractures, visible distortions in reality where past, present, and future seemed to bleed together. "It's spreading," Min whispered. "The Chronos infection is spreading." Within hours, the situation had escalated beyond anyone's worst predictions. Emergency services were overwhelmed with cases, and the first quarantine zones had been established in the downtown districts. Min had converted Laboratory 6 into a crisis center, coordinating with medical teams while analyzing the virus's structure. Trang organized the incoming data, her medical training proving invaluable as she sorted through case reports looking for patterns. "The infection rate is exponential," she reported grimly. "And it's not just direct contact. It's spreading through the ChronoNet relays themselves." Huang, who hadn't slept in 36 hours, looked up from his workstation. "I've managed to isolate the affected servers, but it's like fighting smoke. The virus adapts to our countermeasures almost instantly." Min studied the 3D model of the virus hovering above his workstation. Unlike conventional pathogens, the Chronos virus existed in a quantum state, simultaneously physical and temporal. It didn't just infect cells, it infected time itself. "We need to understand how it originated," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. "This isn't a natural mutation." "Are you suggesting it was engineered?" Khan asked sharply. The general had established a military command center adjacent to the laboratory. his presence a constant reminder of the government's interest in the crisis. I'm saying its structure is too perfectly aligned with ChronoNet's quantum signature to be coincidental, Min replied. Someone either created this deliberately, or it evolved in response to our manipulation of temporal physics. Khan's eyes narrowed. If it was engineered, it could be weaponized, controlled. Min slammed his hand on the table. This isn't a weapon, General. It's a catastrophe. We've disrupted the natural order of time, and now we're facing the consequences. Their argument was interrupted by Trang's gasp. On the main screen, footage from street cameras showed a disturbing new development. In old Quarter Saigon, where colonial architecture still stood alongside modern buildings, the air itself seemed to ripple and tear. Through these time fractures, glimpses of the past and possible futures were visible. Horse-drawn carriages from the colonial era, alongside sleek vehicles that hadn't yet been invented. The fractures are expanding, Huang observed, his voice hollow with dread. Reality is becoming unstable. Min's phone rang, Mai's number flashing on the screen. With a pang of guilt, he realized he hadn't spoken to his daughter since the crisis began. Mai, are you safe? He asked immediately. Dad, something strange is happening in our neighborhood. Mai's voice was remarkably calm, given the circumstances. People are disappearing, and others are changing. Mrs. Nguyen next door aged 50 years in minutes. Listen carefully, Min said, struggling to keep his voice steady. Lock all doors and windows. Don't use any ChronoNet devices. I'm sending a secure transport to bring you to the facility. I'm not leaving without helping people here, Mai replied, with a determination that reminded him painfully of her mother. There are children who've been separated from their parents. I'm gathering them at the community center. Mai, it's not safe. Nothing is safe now, Dad, but I can't just hide while people suffer. Isn't that what you taught me? Before Min could respond, the line went dead. He turned to find Khan watching him with unexpected sympathy. I'll send a team to escort your daughter and the others to safety, the general offered. We've established secure zones in the northern districts. Min nodded gratefully, momentarily setting aside their ideological differences. Thank you. As night fell over Saigon, the city transformed into an otherworldly landscape. The time fractures had multiplied, creating sections where reality itself seemed fractured. Military checkpoints controlled movement between stable zones, while medical teams in temporal protection suits searched for survivors in the affected areas. From the laboratory's panoramic windows, Min watched military helicopters circling the city, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. Digital billboards that normally displayed advertisements now showed emergency instructions and quarantine information. You should rest, Trang advised, appearing at his side with a cup of coffee. You've been working for 2 days straight. Min accepted the coffee gratefully. Any word on Mai? The military transport reached the community center, but Trang hesitated. There was a problem. A time fracture formed between them and the building. They're trying to find an alternate route. Min's hand tightened around the cup. I should be there. You're needed here, Trang said firmly. Mai is smart and resourceful. She'll be all right. Before Min could argue, Huang called them over to his station. I've completed the analysis of Patient Zero's ChronoNet logs, he announced. I found something disturbing. The screen showed a complex sequence of code, the digital signature of ChronoNet interactions with the patient's biology. This code sequence doesn't match our standard protocols, Huang explained, highlighting sections of the data. Someone modified his ChronoNet implant with an experimental algorithm from our research database. Min stared at the familiar code structure. That's from my vaccine research, he said in disbelief. Someone took my experimental temporal stabilization algorithm and implemented it without the safety protocols. Could it have been the patient himself? Trang asked. Black market modifications of ChronoNet have been increasing. Min shook his head. This is too sophisticated. Only someone with high-level access could have... He stopped abruptly, turning to look at Khan, who had entered the laboratory silently. Your security clearance gives you access to our research database, doesn't it, General? Min asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Khan's expression remained neutral. As does that of 30 other government officials and researchers. Dr. Min, are you accusing me of something? The military has been pressuring us for years to develop temporal manipulation techniques for strategic advantages, Min continued, anger building in his voice. When we refused to weaponize Chrononet, did you decide to take matters into your own hands? The general's eyes hardened. Careful, Doctor. These are extraordinary accusations during a national emergency. Tell me I'm wrong, Min challenged. Tell me you didn't authorize experiments with my research. Instead of answering, Khan turned to address the room at large. The President has declared a state of emergency, effective immediately. All Chrononet research and facilities are under military jurisdiction. My team will be overseeing all further research into the Chronos infection. Armed soldiers filed into the laboratory, taking positions at key points. The scientists and medical staff exchanged alarmed glances. This is a scientific crisis, not a military one, Min protested. Your interference will only... This is no longer a request. Dr. Min, Khan interrupted coldly. Your expertise is valuable, but your cooperation is not optional. National security is at stake. What national security? Min laughed bitterly. Look outside. Time itself is unraveling. There won't be a nation to secure if we don't solve this scientifically. Khan stepped closer, lowering his voice. We've been monitoring the international response. Several countries are already developing countermeasures, weapons designed to exploit temporal vulnerabilities. We cannot fall behind. So that's what this is about? Min's disgust was palpable. Turning a catastrophe into an arms race? Before Khan could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. On the monitoring screens, a massive time fracture had formed in the city center, larger than any previously recorded. Buildings within its radius flickered between states of construction, completion, and decay. People caught in its effect moved at different speeds, some frozen in place, others blurring with accelerated motion. Evacuation protocols, Khan ordered his men, then turned to Min. This discussion isn't over. You will continue your work under military supervision. As the general left to coordinate the response, Trang approached Min. What do we do? She whispered. Min watched the chaos unfolding on the screens, his mind racing. We continue our work, he said finally. But we need to secure our data from military control. Huang, can you create a secure partition in the research database? The engineer nodded. Already on it. They won't find everything. Good. Because I think I understand what's happening now. Min pulled up his research notes. The virus isn't just spreading through Chrononet. It's learning from it. Each infected person becomes a new vector, and the virus adapts based on their temporal patterns. So it evolves differently in each host? Trang asked, beginning to understand. Exactly. And that might be our way to fight it. Min's eyes lit up with the first hope they'd felt in days. We need blood samples from as many infected individuals as possible, particularly those showing unusual responses to the infection. As they formulated their plan, Min couldn't help glancing at the city map, where the community center, where Mai was helping children, remained cut off by time fractures. The thought of his daughter trapped in that temporal chaos filled him with dread, but also strengthened his resolve. He would fix this, for Mai, for the memory of Lin, and for a world that had trusted his science perhaps too completely. In the old quarter of Saigon, Mai Lei guided a group of frightened children through narrow alleys, avoiding the visible time fractures that had transformed the familiar neighborhood into a labyrinth of temporal distortions. At 16, Mai had inherited her father's scientific mind and her mother's compassionate heart, a combination that made her both methodical and fearless in the current crisis. "Stay close together," she instructed the 5 children, ranging from ages 6 to 13. "If you see the air shimmer like water, stop immediately." The youngest boy, Ben, clutched her hand tightly. "Are we going to disappear like my mom did?" Mai squeezed his hand reassuringly. "No, we're going to find somewhere safe, and then we'll find your mom. She's probably looking for you right now." In truth, Mai had witnessed enough to know that many of the disappeared might never return. The time fractures seemed to displace people randomly, some appearing minutes later in different locations, others vanishing completely. She had been attempting to lead the children to a military evacuation point when a massive fracture had cut off their route, forcing them to backtrack through the increasingly unstable district. What Mai hadn't told anyone, including her father, was that she had experienced strange symptoms herself since the crisis began. Unlike the horrific rapid aging or temporal displacement affecting others, Mai had noticed that time seemed to flow differently around her. Time fractures appeared to bend away from her path, and when she had accidentally brushed against a smaller one, she had felt a strange resonance but suffered no ill effects. As they turned a corner, they came face to face with a particularly large fracture blocking the entire street. Through its shimmering surface, Mai could see glimpses of the same location at different points in time: colonial-era carriages, modern cars, and strange vehicles she couldn't identify. "We have to go back," said Lin, the oldest girl in the group. Mai studied the phenomenon carefully. "No, the fractures are spreading too quickly behind us. We need to go forward." "But how?" Lin gestured at the impassable distortion. Mai took a deep breath. "I'm going to test something. All of you stay here." Despite the children's protests, Mai approached the fracture slowly. As she had observed before, the distortion seemed to recoil slightly from her presence. She extended her hand cautiously, feeling the strange tingling sensation as her fingers neared the shimmering barrier. When her hand made contact, instead of being affected by the temporal distortion, Mai felt the fracture respond to her touch, bending and contracting like a living thing. Concentrating hard, she pushed against it, creating a small, stable pathway. "Come quickly," she called to the children. "Stay right behind me and don't touch the edges." One by one, she guided them through the narrow, safe passage she had somehow created. Once they were all through, Mai released her focus, and the fracture snapped back into place. The children stared at her with a mixture of fear and awe. "How did you do that?" Lin whispered. Mai looked at her hands, equally confused and amazed. "I don't know, but I think it has something to do with my mother. She was one of the first to use ChronoNet technology, before I was born." What she didn't add was her growing suspicion that her unusual abilities might be the key to understanding the Chronos infection. She needed to reach her father and the research team. But first, she had to ensure these children's safety. As night fell over the fractured city, they finally reached a military checkpoint. Soldiers in temporal protection suits approached cautiously, scanning them for signs of infection. "I'm Mai, she told the officer in charge. "Dr. Lemin's daughter. I need to speak with him immediately." The officer's eyes widened in recognition. "We've been searching for you. There's a transport waiting to take you to the ChronoNet facility." As the children were led away to a quarantine shelter, Mai turned to the officer. "I need to tell you something important. I think I might be immune to the time fractures, and I need to get to my father's laboratory as soon as possible." Back at the ChronoNet complex, the situation had deteriorated further. Military control had tightened, with armed guards stationed throughout the research wing. Min and his team worked under constant surveillance, their access to certain systems restricted by Khan's orders. Despite these limitations, they had made progress. Blood samples from dozens of infected patients had revealed patterns in how the virus adapted to different hosts. It responds to emotional states, Min explained to Trang and Hoang in a hushed voice, careful to avoid being overheard by the military observers. The virus's temporal effects intensify with strong emotions, particularly fear and stress. That explains the acceleration in public spaces, Trang noted. Mass panic would create perfect conditions for the virus to spread. Huang frowned at the data on his tablet. But it doesn't explain why some areas are more affected than others. The Old Quarter has the highest concentration of fractures, yet it has fewer ChronoNet users than the business district. Before Min could respond, the laboratory doors slid open. General Khan entered, followed by two scientists in military uniforms. Dr. Min, Khan announced, your new colleagues from the Defense Research Agency will be joining your team. They specialize in containment protocols for quantum biological threats. Min recognized the euphemism. These weren't containment specialists. They were weapons researchers. We have enough expertise here, he objected. My team has made significant progress understanding the infection's patterns. And yet the city continues to fall into temporal chaos, Khan countered smoothly. Perhaps fresh perspectives are needed. One of the military scientists, a woman with sharp features and calculating eyes, stepped forward. We've reviewed your findings. Dr. Min, your focus on a cure is admirable but impractical, given the infection's rate of spread. Our priority should be containment and neutralization. Neutralization? Min repeated incredulously. These are people, not targets. Infected individuals are vectors, the woman replied coldly. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Before the argument could escalate, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A military officer entered, escorting a familiar figure that made Min's heart leap. Mai! His daughter rushed toward him, and for a moment, all protocol was forgotten as father and daughter embraced. Min held her tightly, the relief of seeing her safe overwhelming all other concerns. I was so worried, he whispered. Mai pulled back, her expression urgent. Dad, I need to tell you something important. I can interact with the time fractures. They don't affect me like other people. The room fell silent as all attention focused on the teenager. Khan stepped forward, his interest piqued. What do you mean, interact? He asked. Mai described her experiences in the Old Quarter, how she had sensed the fractures, how they had seemed to recoil from her presence, and how she had created a safe passage for the children. Min's mind raced with the implications. We need to run tests immediately, he said, leading Mai toward the medical section of the laboratory. Your blood might contain antibodies that could help us create a vaccine. Or something far more valuable, Khan interjected, following closely. If she can manipulate these fractures, it could be the strategic advantage we need. Min stopped abruptly, turning to face the general. My daughter is not a military asset, he said, his voice low and dangerous. She's here to help us find a cure, not to become a weapon in your arsenal. Khan's expression hardened. In case you've forgotten, Doctor, we are in a state of emergency. All resources, including human ones, are subject to national security protocols. That's enough, Trang intervened, stepping between them. This girl has been through a traumatic experience and needs medical attention first. Arguments can wait. To Min's surprise, Khan backed down, though his eyes remained fixed on Mai with unsettling interest. Very well. Conduct your tests, Doctor. But I expect full reports on all findings. As Trang led Mai to the medical bay, Min felt a chill of foreboding. His daughter's unique condition might indeed hold the key to fighting the Chronos infection, but it also made her a target for those who saw opportunity in catastrophe. The next 12 hours were a blur of intensive research. Mai's blood samples revealed something extraordinary. Her cells contained a natural temporal stabilizer, a protein that seemed to neutralize the Chronos virus on contact. It's remarkable, Min told Huang as they studied the 3D model of Mai's cellular structure. The protein creates a kind of temporal anchor, preventing the quantum fluctuations that allow the virus to manipulate time. Huang zoomed in on a particular molecular sequence. "The structure looks familiar," he observed. "Almost like Lin's modified cells," Min finished, his voice barely audible. "From the original Chrononet trials." The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. Lin had been pregnant with Mai during the early stages of treatment. The experimental Chrononet procedures had altered not just Lin's temporal biology, but that of her unborn child as well. Mai inherited a stabilized version of the changes that killed her mother, Min whispered, grief and wonder mingling in his voice. Lin's sacrifice might have created the very immunity we need. While Min processed this emotional revelation, Huang focused on the practical implications. If we can synthesize this protein, we could create a vaccine, maybe even a treatment for those already infected. Min nodded, determination replacing shock. "Set up the protein sequencer. We need to—" The laboratory doors slid open as General Khan entered, accompanied by his military scientists and several armed guards. "I've reviewed your preliminary findings," Khan announced without preamble. "The girl's immunity is indeed significant. She will be transferred to our defense research facility for more comprehensive study." Min stepped forward, placing himself between Khan and the medical bay where Mai rested. "Absolutely not. We can develop a vaccine here, with voluntary samples. There's no need to—" "This is not a request. Dr. Min," Khan interrupted. "The situation has escalated. Time fractures have been reported in neighboring countries. This is now an international security crisis. All the more reason to focus on a cure rather than weaponization." Min argued. "If we can synthesize Mai's temporal antibodies—" "A process that could take weeks," one of the military scientists interjected. "Meanwhile, direct application of the girl's abilities could provide immediate tactical advantages in managing the fractures." Min looked at the cold calculation in their eyes and understood with perfect clarity. They didn't see Mai as a 16-year-old girl, or even as a source of medical breakthrough. They saw her as a strategic asset, a human tool to be deployed against temporal distortions. "She's a child," Min said quietly. "My child." Khan's expression softened slightly, perhaps the first genuine emotion Min had seen from him. "I understand your concern as a father, Dr. Min, but we must all make sacrifices in times of crisis. Your daughter will be treated with the utmost care." "Like the care you showed when you experimented with my temporal stabilization algorithms?" Min challenged. "Creating this disaster in the first place." A flash of something, guilt, perhaps, or simply annoyance at being caught, crossed Khan's face. "The origins of the Chronos infection are still undetermined," he said stiffly. "Now, please step aside. We have our orders." Min stood his ground. "I need time to complete the protein synthesis. A few more hours could make the difference between a temporary military advantage and a permanent cure." After a tense moment, Khan nodded reluctantly. "You have until dawn. Then we transfer the girl, and all research data, to the secure facility." As the military contingent withdrew, Trang emerged from the medical bay, her expression grave. "Mai heard everything," she said quietly. "She wants to speak with you." Inside the medical bay, Mai sat on the edge of her bed, an IV line delivering fluids to her arm. Despite the ordeal she had been through, her eyes were clear and determined, so like her mother's that it made Min's heart ache. "You can't let them take me," she said without preamble. "Not because I'm afraid, but because they don't understand what's really happening." Min sat beside her, taking her hand. "What do you mean?" "The time fractures. They're not just random distortions," Mai explained. "When I touch them, I can feel intentions, emotions. It's like the virus is conscious in some way, responding to humanity's collective fear and anger. Min frowned. That's not scientifically possible. Neither is time becoming contagious, Mai countered. Dad, I think the Chronos infection is nature's response to ChronoNet, a correction mechanism for our tampering with natural law. The concept was radical, yet it aligned with the virus's observed behavior, its ability to learn and adapt based on emotional states, its tendency to target areas of high temporal manipulation. If you're right, Min said slowly, then military intervention would only make things worse. Attempting to weaponize the fractures would amplify the very emotions feeding the virus. Mai nodded. We need to shut down ChronoNet completely. All of it. It's the only way to stop the infection at its source. The implications were staggering. ChronoNet had become integrated into medical care, economic systems, even basic infrastructure. A complete shutdown would cause chaos, but perhaps less chaos than the continuing temporal collapse. Khan will never agree to it, Min said grimly. He sees ChronoNet as a strategic resource. Then we don't ask permission, Mai replied, her young face set with resolve. You created ChronoNet, Dad. You must know how to shut it down. Min thought of the central control systems, the quantum servers that maintain the network's integrity. There was a kill switch, a final safeguard he had insisted on implementing despite government objections. It would require physical access to the core, he said, and bypassing military security. I can help with that, came Huang's voice from the doorway. The engineer entered, accompanied by Trang. The core's security systems are based on my algorithms. I can create a temporary override. Trang stepped forward. And I can distract the medical staff while you access the secure elevator. Min looked at his colleagues, his friends, with profound gratitude. What you're suggesting is treason, he warned them. If we're caught, if we do nothing, there won't be a country left to commit treason against, Huang said simply. I helped build ChronoNet. I share responsibility for what it's become. Trang nodded in agreement. Lin was my friend. I won't let her daughter become a military experiment, or watch our city disappear into temporal chaos. Min turned back to Mai. You'll need to stay here until we secure access to the core. Can you synthesize more of your antibodies while we prepare? Mai smiled, a hint of her mother's determination shining through. Already started. I convinced one of the lab techs to show me how to operate the centrifuge. We'll have enough samples for initial vaccine production within hours. Pride swelled in Min's chest. Pride mingled with a father's fear for his child's safety. In the midst of temporal chaos, his daughter had grown into someone remarkable, someone who might help save them all. As dawn approached, the city of Saigon had become almost unrecognizable. Time fractures had multiplied exponentially, creating a patchwork of temporal zones where physics itself seemed to operate by different rules. In some areas, time flowed backwards. In others, it accelerated or froze entirely. Buildings existed in multiple states simultaneously, constructed, demolished, and rebuilt in endless loops. Military forces had established safe corridors between stable zones, evacuating civilians where possible, and establishing quarantine perimeters around the most severely affected districts. International news feeds showed similar outbreaks beginning in neighboring countries, though none yet approached the scale of Ground Zero in Vietnam. In the ChronoNet laboratory, Min and his team made their final preparations. Huang had created security clearances that would grant them temporary access to the core level, while Trang had prepared medical transport documents that would allow them to move Mai's synthesized antibodies to another facility. In reality, a secure location where production could continue if their plan failed. General Khan's team will be here in 20 minutes, Trang reported, checking her tablet. The military transport is already on the landing pad. Min nodded, inputting the final sequences into his tablet. Are we ready? Huang held up a small device, a specialized override key for the core's quantum locks. Once we're inside, you'll have approximately 5 minutes before the security systems recognize the intrusion and lock down. And the antibody samples? Min asked Trang. Packed and ready for transport. I've also uploaded Mai's protein sequence to 3 separate secure servers. Even if they seize our research, the data is safe. Mai emerged from the medical bay, dressed in a standard lab uniform that made her look older than her 16 years. The events of the past days had matured her in ways that went beyond appearance. There was a new gravity in her eyes, a weight of responsibility that Min wished she didn't have to bear. I'm ready, she said simply. Min embraced her one last time. Remember the plan. Once Trang gives the signal, take the service elevator to sublevel 3. Huang will meet you there and guide you to the evacuation point. Mai clung to him tightly. What about you? I'll join you as soon as I've initiated the shutdown sequence, he promised, hoping it wasn't a lie. The core shutdown would trigger massive systems failures throughout the complex, including, potentially, the very evacuation routes they planned to use. A distant explosion shook the building, causing lights to flicker momentarily. The time fractures were encroaching on the Chrononet complex itself. We need to move now, Huang urged. The fractures are destabilizing the outer security perimeter. As they prepared to separate, the laboratory doors slid open unexpectedly. General Khan stood in the entrance, flanked by armed soldiers. Your time is up, Dr. Min, he announced. We're here for the girl and your research data. Min stepped forward, feigning resignation. Of course, General. We've prepared everything as requested. The antibody samples are packaged for transport, and Mai is ready to accompany you. Khan studied him suspiciously, clearly surprised by the lack of resistance. Your cooperation is appreciated, Doctor. Perhaps you've finally understood the necessity of our approach. I understand necessity better than you know, Min replied carefully. Trang, please show the General's team where the samples are stored. As Trang led several soldiers toward the storage units, Min caught her subtle nod. The distraction had begun. General, if I might have a word in private, Min said, guiding Khan toward his office. There's something about Mai's condition you should know before transport. Once inside, Min closed the door and turned to face Khan directly. The Chronos infection was caused by your unauthorized experiments with my temporal stabilization algorithms, wasn't it? Khan's expression hardened. A calculated risk. Your research offered possibilities you refused to explore. Military applications that could have revolutionized warfare. And instead, you've revolutionized destruction, Min said bitterly. Time itself is unraveling because of your calculated risk. An unfortunate outcome, but not without opportunity, Khan replied, unrepentant. The first nation to master these temporal distortions will hold power beyond imagination. At what cost? Min demanded. Look outside. People are being erased from existence. Reality itself is fragmenting. Is your ambition worth the end of civilization? For a moment, doubt flickered across Khan's face. There are always casualties in advancement. Doctor, you should understand that better than most. Your wife volunteered for those first trials, knowing the risks. The mention of Lin sent a surge of rage through Min, but he controlled it. Now was not the time for emotion. Now was the time for action. You're right about one thing, he said quietly. I do understand sacrifice. That's why I've already initiated the shutdown sequence for Chrononet's core. Khan's eyes widened in alarm. You're bluffing. The core is secured by systems designed by engineer Huang, who's currently bypassing them. Min finished. In approximately 10 minutes, Chrononet will go offline permanently. The quantum servers will initiate a controlled collapse, severing all connections to the network. That's suicide, Khan exclaimed. Millions depend on Chrononet for medical stability, and the economic impact will be severe, Min acknowledged. But temporary. What's happening now is extinction. General, I'm choosing the lesser catastrophe. Khan reached for his sidearm. I cannot allow this. Before he could draw his weapon, the building shook violently as a massive time fracture formed directly outside the complex. Through the office windows, they watched as reality distorted in spectacular and terrifying ways. Fragments of different time periods collided, ancient temples materializing within modern structures, future technologies briefly appearing before vanishing again. In the chaos, alarms blared throughout the facility. Khan's communication device crackled with urgent messages from his team. Sir, the girl is gone, and something's happening to the main servers. Systems are shutting down across the complex. Khan turned back to Min, fury and desperation in his eyes. Stop this now! It's too late, Min replied calmly. The process has begun. With a curse, Khan rushed from the office, shouting orders to his men. Min took advantage of the confusion to slip out through a side door, making his way toward the service corridors that would lead him to the core. The journey through the increasingly unstable facility was harrowing. Time fractures had penetrated the building's lower levels, creating corridors that led to nowhere or looped back on themselves in impossible geometries. Twice, Min encountered soldiers, but they were too preoccupied with evacuation procedures to question his presence. Finally, he reached the central elevator shaft that descended to the core. As promised, Huang had overridden the security systems, and the elevator responded to Min's command, carrying him down to the heart of Chrononet. The core was a marvel of quantum engineering, a spherical chamber where thousands of quantum processors maintained the temporal network that spanned the nation. Blue light pulsed throughout the space, creating patterns that mimicked the flow of time itself. Min approached the central console, his hands steady despite the gravity of what he was about to do. The shutdown sequence required both physical and digital authorization, a final safeguard against accidental or malicious termination. As he began the process, a voice spoke from behind him. Step away from the console, Dr. Min. Khan stood at the entrance to the core, weapon drawn. His uniform was disheveled, and a cut above his eye suggested he had encountered his own difficulties navigating the fractured facility. You know I can't do that, General, Min replied, continuing the shutdown procedure without turning around. Think about what you're doing, Khan urged, advancing slowly. Chrononet is our creation, our legacy. We can control these temporal distortions, study them, master them. Some things aren't meant to be mastered, Min said softly. Time isn't a resource to exploit, or a weapon to wield. It's the fabric of existence itself. The core's lights began to pulse more rapidly as the shutdown sequence progressed. Warning messages flashed across the displays, counting down to final termination. I will shoot you if necessary, Khan warned, his voice strained. Min turned to face him at last. Then you'll have to shoot me, because I won't stop. This ends now, all of it. The manipulation, the control, the arrogance of believing we could bend time to our will without consequences. For a long moment, they stared at each other, scientist and soldier, creator and exploiter. Two men whose different visions for humanity's future had led them to this pivotal moment. Then, something unexpected happened. A time fracture formed directly between them, a shimmering distortion that seemed to bend light and reality itself. Through it, Min caught glimpses of alternate possibilities. Himself, as a younger man with Lin still by his side. Khan, in a civilian life, free from military ambition. Mai growing up in a world where time remained a constant, rather than a variable. Khan staggered back from the fracture, his weapon lowered in shock. What is this? The culmination, Min answered, watching the fracture with a scientist's fascination despite the danger. All possibilities converging as the system prepares to collapse. The countdown on the displays reached its final seconds. Min made no further move toward the console. The process was now irreversible. You should evacuate, General, he advised calmly. When the core collapses, The temporal backlash will be severe. Instead of fleeing, Khan stepped forward, peering into the fracture with the same curiosity that had likely led him to experiment with Chrononet in the first place. "It's beautiful," he murmured, "like seeing the machinery of the universe laid bare." The final countdown reached 0. Throughout the core, the blue light pulsed once, twice, then began to fade. The quantum processors, deprived of their energy source, began powering down in sequence. "Goodbye, General," Min said, turning toward the emergency exit. "May we meet in a better timeline." But as he moved to leave, the fracture between them expanded suddenly, enveloping both men in its shimmering distortion. Min felt a sensation like being pulled in multiple directions simultaneously. His consciousness stretched across possibilities, his body simultaneously present and absent. For what seemed like eternity compressed into an instant, he experienced fragments of lives he might have lived. The joy of watching Mai grow up with both parents, the triumph of Chrononet used solely for healing, the simple pleasure of growing old naturally, without technological intervention. Then darkness claimed him. Min awoke to the steady beep of medical equipment. Opening his eyes required monumental effort, his eyelids feeling heavier than they had any right to be. When he finally managed it, a sterile white ceiling came into focus, followed by the concerned face of Nurse Trang. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You've been unconscious for 3 weeks. "Mai?" he asked immediately, his voice a hoarse whisper. Trang smiled, relief evident in her expression. "She's fine. Better than fine, actually. She's been helping coordinate the recovery efforts." With Trang's assistance, Min slowly sat up, taking in his surroundings. He was in a hospital room, not the high-tech facilities of the Chrononet complex, but a more traditional medical ward. "The core shutdown worked," Trang explained, anticipating his questions. "The time fractures began retracting almost immediately. They haven't disappeared completely. Some areas still show temporal distortions, but they're stable, no longer expanding." "And the infected people?" Min asked. "Many recovered once Chrononet went offline. Others—" Trang hesitated. "We lost about 30% of those with advanced infection, but Mai's antibodies have been synthesized into a vaccine. We've been administering it to everyone in affected zones." Min absorbed this information silently. The cost had been high, terribly high, but extinction had been averted. "Khan?" he asked finally. Trang's expression darkened. "Missing. Presumed lost in a temporal displacement. Several other military personnel as well. The core collapse created a final, massive fracture before the system shut down." Before Min could respond, the door opened, and Mai entered, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers. Seeing her father awake, she rushed to his bedside, embracing him with tears in her eyes. "Dad, you're finally awake!" Min held his daughter tightly, overwhelmed by the simple miracle of her presence. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "For everything." Mai pulled back, wiping away tears. "Don't be sorry, you saved everyone. And now we're helping rebuild." "Rebuild?" Min questioned, looking between Mai and Trang. "The world is different now," Trang explained. "Without Chrononet, many systems had to be reconfigured, but people are adapting, and Mai has been instrumental in understanding the remaining time fractures. I can still interact with them," Mai elaborated. "But they're different now, more like echoes than active distortions. Engineer Huang thinks they might eventually fade completely. But until then, we're learning to live with them." Min struggled to process everything. "The international situation?" "Similar outbreaks occurred in countries with Chrononet-based technologies," Trang said. "But the shutdown here triggered emergency protocols worldwide. Most containment efforts were successful." Mai helped her father stand, supporting him as he took his first tentative steps in weeks. Together, they moved to the window, where Min could see the city for himself. Saigon stretched before him, recognizable yet transformed. Most buildings remained intact, but here and there, strange temporal anomalies were visible, structures that seemed to flicker between states, parks where seasons changed independently of the surrounding areas, streets where light behaved according to different physical laws. Yet amid these reminders of catastrophe, life continued. People navigated the altered landscape with remarkable adaptability, establishing new routines around the stable zones. Markets had reopened, traffic flowed along designated safe routes, and reconstruction efforts were visible throughout the city. Humanity is resilient, Trang observed, joining them at the window. We're learning to live with the consequences of our ambition. And developing new technologies, Mai added. Ones that work with natural time rather than against it. Huang has some fascinating ideas based on what we've learned. Min placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, feeling a complex mixture of sorrow for what had been lost and hope for what might yet be built. Your mother would be proud of you, he said softly. Mai smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. She would be proud of both of us. As the weeks passed, Min regained his strength and joined the recovery efforts. The government, chastened by the near-extinction event, had established a new regulatory framework for temporal research, one that prioritized safety and ethical considerations over military or economic applications. Min found himself appointed to lead a newly formed ethics committee, tasked with evaluating all proposed technologies that might impact temporal stability. It was a responsibility he approached with profound humility, all too aware of how his own creation had nearly destroyed civilization. Mai, meanwhile, had become something of a symbol for the new era, the girl who could walk between moments, helping others navigate the lingering temporal anomalies. Her immunity had been studied extensively, providing insights that led to more effective vaccines and treatments for those still suffering from milder forms of the Chronos infection. 6 months after the shutdown, on a rare day free from meetings and research, Min and Mai walked together through the old quarter of Saigon. This area, once the epicenter of the time fractures, now hosted the most spectacular temporal anomalies, beautiful as well as unsettling. They passed a cafe where patrons enjoyed their coffee amid perpetual autumn, leaves forever falling in slow motion from trees that never lost their foliage. Further along, a temple complex shifted subtly between ancient and restored states, both versions coexisting in a strange harmony. Do you ever regret it? Mai asked suddenly. Creating Chrononet in the first place? Min considered the question carefully. I regret my blindness to its dangers, he answered, finally. I was so focused on what could be achieved that I didn't fully consider what should be attempted. They stopped at a small park where a time fracture had created something extraordinary, a fountain where water flowed upward rather than down, defying gravity in a perpetual reverse cascade. But no, Min continued, watching the impossible fountain. I don't regret the knowledge we gained, only how we applied it. Mai nodded thoughtfully. Huang says, some of the principles we discovered might help develop new medical treatments, ones that work with natural temporal rhythms instead of trying to control them. That sounds promising, Min said, genuinely interested. I'd like to see his research. They continued their walk as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the altered landscape of the city. The evening light caught the edges of the time fractures, making them shimmer like veils between realities. Dad, Mai said hesitantly, I've been having dreams about Mom, but they don't feel like ordinary dreams. It's like I'm seeing her across a time fracture, in a reality where she survived. Min felt a pang in his heart, grief mingled with a scientist's curiosity. The fractures do sometimes reveal alternate timelines. Huang's team has documented several cases. Do you think it's really her? Mai asked, vulnerability evident in her voice. Or just my imagination? Min put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. Perhaps both, he said gently. The boundaries between what's possible and impossible have become more flexible since the Chronos infection. but whether she exists in another timeline or only in our memories, your mother is still with us in the ways that matter most. They reached the riverfront as the last light of day painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. A small time fracture near the water's edge created a beautiful phenomenon. The sunset reflected in the river appeared to happen in slow motion, colors shifting and blending with dreamlike grace. Min and Mai stood together, watching this impossible sunset, father and daughter, survivors of a catastrophe that had nearly unraveled time itself. In the wake of destruction, they had found a new appreciation for each moment, each second of existence. Time was never meant to be controlled, Min reflected, only cherished. Mai leaned against her father's shoulder. One moment at a time. Around them, the city of Saigon continued its evening rhythm, changed forever, yet enduring, learning to embrace a new reality where time itself had become something more mysterious, more precious, and infinitely more respected than before. In the distance, the last time fractures shimmered like stars, coming alive in the gathering darkness. Not wounds in reality, but windows to possibility. Reminders of humanity's brush with extinction and its chance for a wiser future. Time, once thought conquered, had revealed itself as the ultimate teacher. And in its unfolding lessons, Min found something he had lost long ago: peace.